Can we call this meeting to order, please? All right.
Yes, yes.
What do I do first? Courtesy of the floor for Personnel Committee?
Seeing no one?
All right. Well, Steve jumped up. I just wanted to know. Seeing
Moving
no
along.
one? Move along. An appointment, a recommendation to the Area Agency on Aging Board. Elizabeth K. Webb, Park Ridge Drive, Easton, PA, being considered for a 2-year term beginning on June 30th, 18, and ending July 1st, 2020. Is there any discussion on this nomination?
I make a motion to put it forward for tomorrow night.
You actually got 3 for.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 3 for.
Also, Marianne Schweitzer, Briar Road, Penargil, same term, June 30, 18 till July 1st, 2020. And Carol Durka, Greenleaf Court, Bethlehem, PA, same term.
Stick with the motion.
Okay, I guess can I second your motion since I'm the
Yes,
only
you
one
have
here?
to. All in favor, aye.
Any discussion? I guess push forward to tomorrow night's meeting.
Ron's here somewhere.
Oh, nope, a fourth one, sorry.
Oh,
Joyce Lambert, Area Agency on Aging Board, same term. Ken, you want to give me another motion since I
Yeah,
missed it?
sure.
Okay, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Appointment to the Drug and Alcohol Advisory Board, Brooke Teshi, Sycamore Avenue, Easton, PA, 2-year term beginning June 30th, 18, and June 30th, 2020.
Make a motion.
Second. Any discussion?
Nope. Next.
Here's
There's
Ron.
Mr. Heckman.
Hi.
Gaming revenue.
we're up to gaming.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to vote no. And it goes forward to tomorrow night.
Okay.
I know this person, and I question their motive for wanting to be on the board. But that doesn't mean I won't put it through. Recommendation for appointment to the Gaming Revenue and Economic Redevelopment Authority. Somebody named Ken Kraft on Chester Road, Bethlehem, PA, for the 5-year term, May 17th of 2018 to December 31st, 2020. Mr. Kraft will be taking Joseph M. Kelly's position on the board.
And you have another one here, too.
And Kevin Lott, Durham Street, Hellertown, 5-year term, same term, taking Mr. David Heinzelman's position on the board.
Well, hopefully it'll be less than 5 years. Did we get the letter of assent from them yet?
Did you get the certification?
Certification that they're, did we get that?
Yeah.
But I think they're waiting until everything ends, so they still need that in case something comes up.
Right, yeah, but they have their, they sent their certification of intent to dissolve their thing?
I think they can't dissolve.
So, Ron, can you make a motion, since Ken can't motion for himself?
Okay.
I make a motion.
I
I'll second it.
Okay, can we just clear this up? I mean, there seems to be a question as to where this authority is in relation to its disbandment. Is there,
Duration.
They have
Of
money and they're
existence.
giving $30,000 to every community, remember?
could we have
They
Mr.
divvied it
McCoy?
up.
It's the position of the administration that it still exists, because in its own view, it still exists until all the money is paid out, and I don't believe all the money's been paid out yet. So, and, you know, they've made some provisions to continue some activities into 2019, including insurance and things of that nature. So I think the board still exists, and these are actually vacancies. They're not These aren't replacing folks. These are vacancies, and I'm going to continue to fill the board until it has ceased to exist.
Okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Attached request for reappointment to the Gracedale Advisory Board, Mary Ann McAvoy, effective term April 19th, 2018 to April 19, 2020.
It's a reappointment.
Yes.
Motion.
Motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Appointment to the Atlanta, Lehigh, and Northampton Transportation Authority, Don Ferranti Hart, Rosewood Street, Easton, PA, considered to finish a 5-year term for Fred Lutz, who resigned. Her term will begin May 3rd, 2018, and end March 2nd, 2019.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, elected official, Janelle Connolly, being considered for a 1-year term to begin May 17th, 2018, and to end December 31st, 2018. She will be replacing Mitch McGilsky on the board. Motion?
Yes.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Jump in if you have any discussion. I am submitting the following individual appointment to the Workforce Board, Lehigh Valley, Danielle and Adam Chateau Place, Easton, being considered for an appointment to finish out Stephen Bailey's term. Her term will begin with a confirmation from council and will end on June 30th, 2020. This position is for a representative from the private sector.
I was on this for years. This is good to have people on it, so I'm glad we have somebody to go on it again.
Okay. All motion?
Yes.
Second? All in favor? Opposed? And last is a request from Sue Wondolowski to consider the following request to eliminate one clerical tech 3 position part-time CS15 and the creation of one clerical tech 3 position full-time CS15. Eliminate the following half-time, create a full-time. Same pay grade. And the attached calculation of the financial impact is attached.
I can speak to that if
Sure, thank you.
like. My name is Liz Kelly, and I'm Director of Human Resources. I'm standing in for Sue Wondolowski. Currently, the part-time clerical Tech 3 is basically like a secretarial person, if you will, who's been providing the Director of Staff Development over at Gracedale, Christine Schneider, with some clerical assistance with tracking the nurses, both LPNs and RNs, and the CNA's training. As you know, there are state requirements for all of these people who work with residents to get certain training every year. Apparently, Gracedale had some sort of computer software or system that they were using to track this training so that they could prove to the state when auditors came in that people were getting it. But the system apparently overloaded because it didn't have the capacity for as much use as they were giving it, and it would crash periodically. So they're upgrading to a new system called Relias. And this clerical will be part of the Relias rollout that will enable them to not only track the training, but also now the employees will be able to take the training online, access it online, fill out things online so that they can indicate when they've completed it. But it will require additional clerical assistance to make sure all the training that is required to be taken is uploaded into this system. And in addition, there's some possibility in the future that Gracedale will be coming to you and asking for another position in order to be able to add a nighttime CNA class for people who would like to work second and third shift and can't be available during the daytime to take the training class. If that were to happen, this Clerical Tech 3 would also provide assistance with enrolling people for that. But in addition, all of the other nurse aid trainee enrollment in Relias and the system that gets them the training they need would be something she's responsible for anyway. So that's why they're interested in making this position go from part-time to full-time. Any questions?
Just, I
Sorry.
mean, you know, I have routine trainings that I have to do every year for my job, and it's a function of human resources that it's done. I guess my question is, well, why isn't this something that's done by HR, or why isn't this an HR type of position rather than like a clerical tech, you know, generic
I
classification?
think that goes to the fact that at Gracedale, there's been a history of a lot of HR functions being performed in the nursing department, which is why there aren't very many HR people over at Gracedale. There are 3 clericals and 1 deputy director, compared to over here where we have 15 clericals, a director, and a deputy director. They seem, for whatever reason that I can only attribute to just the history of the organization and the way it's operated, nursing has taken on a number of HR functions that I wouldn't have necessarily said had to be done by nurses.
Any other
Does
questions?
that answer your question?
Ms. Kelly and I have discussed this issue, and we're reviewing it, but it's a big lift to take the HR functions out of there and bring them over here.
Any other questions? Motion to accept position? All in favor?
Madam Chair? May I?
Yes.
Well, with respect to your question, with that nominee, we could make her available to answer any questions you might have that could ameliorate your concerns or demonstrate what they might be. I apologize. I know you raised this issue with me before, and she should be here tonight. She isn't to do that. So if before we move her forward, you'd like to do that at the next personnel committee meeting, we could make her available for that, as opposed to running her appointment through tomorrow night. Of course, that's council's decision ultimately. But I'm making that offer. If
I
that's
would-
something you want to do.
I would prefer to ask her questions in front of the entire council. I mean, I know what, again, I'm just running this meeting because Billy's not here, but I definitely have questions for her.
Okay, well then, my suggestion would be, well, I'm not going to tell council what to do.
No, I don't,
Council
but
can
I
figure
knew,
it out
so,
for themselves. You could table the nomination tomorrow. We could bring her forward in the next personnel committee meeting, and you can ask her questions. Or Human Services, wherever you want to do it at.
I'm not on the committee, but I mean, I'd appreciate it because I mean, I think if anyone knows, and I may support that person, whatever your concerns are, but I think that if anyone has concerns on anyone, that they should be able to vet it so that everyone's, because I think we all, 99% of these, no one knows who they are, and if someone does have any questions or concern, that would maybe affect the rest of our vote.
I make a motion, we take it off for tomorrow night's meeting until Mrs. Vargo Hefner can get her questions answered, be it in front of a personnel committee meeting in 4 weeks, or be it personally on her own, so she can feel. I mean, it's a volunteer position. I don't,
I was just going to suggest Human Services meets tomorrow. The lady's here tomorrow before the meeting. She talk to her tomorrow, and then you can wrap it up or not wrap it up.
it's not really a human services
it's not a
function.
human services issue. I mean, look, I'm not in a position to want to turn away volunteers, but I just
Well, it
have
is a
some.
Human Services
Yeah,
issue,
sure.
isn't it, though? It comes under the...
No offense,
Oh,
but
it's here.
committees, I'm sort of confused with this strict delineation. Committees are committees. I mean, they're not really county council meetings. If she wants to ask a question, we could say, hey, this could be talked about tomorrow. But if she wants to wait 4 weeks, that's her call. She has the question.
I could wait 4 weeks.
Well, I made a motion to table it
second
for
that.
4
I'll second.
weeks.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay, thank you.
I will endeavor to have her here at that next personnel committee meeting. Thank you.
Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have a break, or do you go right on?
No, the folks need a minute or 2 minutes.
We're going through here.
Fine.
Are you saying you need a minute?
I don't need a minute, but I mean, you know, besides yourself, there are a few other people sitting here who may or may not agree with you.
All right, let's see the big stack here.
Anybody need a break? All right, we'll jump right into it if you want. I think it looks like we'll make Mr. Kraft happy. We'll start right away. Who's he?
Not me.
Sarah and Mr. Warner.
Mr. Warner. Okay, before you start your meeting, Tara Zarinsky's not going to be here tonight because her son is inducted into the Marine Corps.
Oh, my.
So she called me all like, you know, oh my God, what do I do? I said, well, you go to the induction ceremony. You know, you don't come here. So that's, you know, for those who are keeping tally of attendance,
Yes.
that's where she's at, just to let everybody know.
Only a low-down creature
Yes,
that crawls on his belly on this earth would it make fun of somebody going to their son.
right. So that's what I said, go to that, don't come here. It's only, I didn't know it was this thick, but, you know,
Yeah.
all right,
Big old mother.
you're on.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we'll start here. Let's see. Courtesy of the floor. Finance Committee is now in session. Courtesy of the floor. Seeing yes?
Yeah, I actually have concern for the committee, Mr. Chairman. A couple days ago, we were copied in on a letter from Mr. Barron indicating that the annual audit would be delayed, and the reason for that delay was because of the failure of the General Purpose Authority to conduct a meeting and approve its audit. I guess what I'm interested in knowing is why was that meeting canceled, and what is the holdup? Mr. Barron, can you?
Yeah, fair. All right.
Before I spoke about my other things, I was going to address that with you this evening, but since you brought it up now, I had a meeting with Mr. Langen today, so a lot of that issue has been worked out. Let me rewind a little bit. When I first took over the job and was appointed as Director of Fiscal Affairs, we were dealing with a lot of challenges with regard to the P3. Much of the project was thought out, but the devil is always in the details, and the details were not specifically delegated to people within the county to do certain things. When questions were asked of the administration back in 2017, don't worry about that, just put $4 million in the budget to make the milestone payments. So that was what was discussed. Since then, we've had to deal with a lot of different things, and one of them is the financials for the GPA. Specifically, now that the GPA is a blended component unit of the county, which is an accounting term, basically because we've given the bridges away, there's not really any consideration. Now, everything the GPA has done is part of our financial statements. And we need to rely on Riley and Company to make sure that that information is correct so we can incorporate it into our financial statements and therefore issue our own financial statements. Now, on April 30th, on April 16th, we received 2 weeks late the draft of the GPA's financial statements, which should have been on the agenda for May 1st and approved. Since the meeting was supposed to happen on April 30th, I had a discussion with Mary Alice Einfalt and the county executive, and we had made the determination because certain loan funds had come in from the GPA that were not part of the P3 project that we did not look into and investigate, we could not bless the financial statements independently that the accounting was correct. Since that time, I said, okay, we discovered this. Well, there's a meeting on the 1st. Debbie Berger will be there. Everybody will be there. We'll talk about it at the meeting. The meeting never happened.
Why not?
I don't know. Mr. Lucius said that there was no business to discuss, and the meeting was canceled. Now, in my meeting with Mr. Langen today, he said, well, I was not made aware of any of this issue until May 9th, and there were all these problems. We were trying to figure out a way to push this process forward without the GPA having to meet and to come to some sort of consensus of what to do, because we have this now June 30th deadline for the CAFR, which gives us our certificate from the GFOA, which helps with our bond rating and certain other financial indicators. So, how have we resolved this issue? Mr. Langdon, the county executive, and myself, we agreed that we are going to hire someone who's familiar with county council, Jeff Weiss. Riley and Company suggested Mr. Weiss from Zelenkowski Axelrod, who has helped out in these situations before. Debbie Borger, who is the auditor for Riley and Company, she was actually going to suggest Jeff Weiss herself until we brought up his name, and that was seemed to be the consensus person. Mr. Langdon was reaching out to him. The county executive and I signed a letter sent to the GPA today that we will approve somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000, which is what we suspect this will cost to get fixed, and up to $5,000 with additional justification if needs be, so we can move that process forward. The GPA has also agreed that to allow Debbie Borger, without meeting, even if it's not ready by June 5th, which is their next meeting, to allow the financial statements to be released without a board action. We're going to get the opinion letter. Hopefully we can make the June 30th deadline. In the meantime, I have requested from the GFOA an extension, which sometimes they do grant 30-day extensions. Again, none of this is our doing, because the GPA's financial statements were 2 weeks later than we normally get them in our timetable, and that is also not Riley and Company's fault. There was also a hesitation from Mr. Langen to release the statements in draft form to our fiscal affairs department, which I don't quite understand. But there are a couple concerns. I think the process is good right now, but it appears that Mr. Langen is sort of the designated, I guess, go-to person for the P3 project, and he's making a lot of unilateral decisions for that project, which could cost the county some money without the GPA board approval, without a public vetting. And it really, we're getting down into this situation where I'm not comfortable, because with moving the financial statements forward, we're fine at this point. But these unilateral decisions that do cost the county money, when county council entered into the services agreement with the GPA, it was never intended to be a blank check. And I think that some on the GPA have that mentality. And that's where this project is going to get out of control. I am actually tracking all of the expenses outside of the milestone payments. And one last thing, there was a discussion about how to handle the accounting for the project going forward. Mm-hmm. Now, the free method is that we create another sheet. We do the accounting internally, because while under the services agreement, Mr. Hughes is doing an excellent job. He will tell you he's a banker, not an accountant. We've corrected a lot of his work, and the project is getting more complicated because we have valuations of bridges, depreciation of bridges based on new construction that's done, and QuickBooks doesn't handle all that, but our accounting software does. Mr. Langen said he would also consider hiring somebody, but that costs money that the GPA doesn't have, and under the services agreement, we pay. So I would vote for the free method, and I hope the GPA goes that route. We're willing to do it, and it would actually speed up the process if we did it that way, as opposed to dealing with another outside entity. So that is the story to date. So it looks like we still can meet that June 30 deadline. We're moving forward. But there's a lot of discussion about, well, I didn't know till the 9th or whatever. The GPA had a scheduled meeting. They had business to discuss. They have a major project, bridges getting up and ready to be built. We should all be talking and understanding the project. That's.
Ms. Hefner Ms. Hefner had motioned her hand up, so I want to let her speak.
And I don't know if you're the person to answer this question, or I can throw it. Is it a reasonable business practice for the person who's the chair of the committee overseeing the financing of the project to oversee the project Because you're saying Mr. Langen is sort of taking
He hasn't really been overseeing the financing of the project. He's just sort of the conduit and has been the line of communication between Krieger, the GPA, and the county. Because under the contract, the county itself is not allowed to speak to Krieger without the GPA present, and vice versa.
That's
That's the
a
way it
gratis
is.
position, it's not a paid position?
Well, there's that I.
Is that a yes or a no?
There's been some bills sent that have not been paid. I'll just put it to you that
That's
way.
my question.
Yes.
And then-
Peg wants to say.
And new bills that have not been paid as well.
Well, Peg's on the GPA.
Well, I know she wants
Prior
to
to
say something. Let her say it,
P3,
Kenny,
I
then you
think,
go ahead.
the accounting and all of that was fine. But then the P3 came in, and I think there's a lack of understanding with some people on that GPA. I think there's a definite lack of understanding, or I'm being kind maybe, or just saying they choose not to understand. I don't know. But apparently it's all together different now. And Deb Borger was actually acting as a bookkeeper and taking things, and she can't audit her own work. So it should really be handed to the county. They have to do it anyway.
Yes, and Deb Borger is, I mean, if there's somebody who should be put up for sainthood in all this, it's her.
It's way beyond QuickBooks.
Yeah, she has done a wonderful job for
Yes.
the GPA.
Yes.
She has helped guide this process along with RKL, who are second in line for that statehood or sainthood, because they have been very, very patient as well.
Yeah, my only question is, you said they have no money to pay for what they need to do, but they can pay an attorney $800,000, and last month they can have a meeting to sue us in case we step on their toes, to engage an attorney and pay for that. So what is going on with this authority? I mean, we have no money, we have no money to do the financials, but we have money to sue you and pay our esteemed
The
attorney
GPA has
$800,000.
money.
The county they did
you
pay.
approved.
They paid the retainer of $10,000 from the GPA's funds that
To
were
retain an
there,
attorney to
retain an
sue us
attorney.
in case they need to.
And
in Philadelphia law firm.
Mr. McClure has said to me, and the orders to the fiscal department are, we will pay expenses to fix bridges. And that is what we are doing. We paid, I believe, somewhere in the ballpark of $43,000 last week for easements, permanent and temporary easements.
yeah, we approved those.
We actually took that over from Krieger because they were having issues and it was difficult for them to actually facilitate that process. So we've done that, and they've agreed to pay us back for the temporary easement checks we've actually issued. So that we've taken on a whole bunch of other work, and we're willing to move forward to get these bridges built. But when we need certain things from the GPA, they have to be willing to meet and discuss these things in an open and public forum.
And who's the roadblock?
They said that there was no business or whatever because I felt they were thinking they could do it the way they had always done in the past, and they didn't need to agree to anything. So there's a lack of understanding or a lack of communication. I don't know what. Anyway.
I just you communicate at meetings, and that's what I thought was going to happen.
Right. So, I mean, I don't want to argue about it. I just am very, I think it's crazy the way.
There's really no argument, Mrs. Farrar.
No, there's no.
Frankly, the General Purpose Authority never had any business in the bridge replacing and refurbishing endeavor. It's just never had any business in it. It is in it now, and we're doing our best to make sure the bridges get repaired and replaced.
Well, I certainly hope we get bridges done better than we used to do, maybe one a year, one every other year. So, that's what sold me on it.
That's a hope that we share.
Well, my biggest problem is the deficiencies report and what bridges are really deficient and what weren't. And
Originally, there were 8 of the, how many? 33? Yeah. Originally, only 8 were PennDOT deficient.
Right, and we are repairing bridges that don't need repair, that are up to rating. I mean, it's completely insane.
Oh, it absolutely is true, and we can demonstrate that for you.
Aren't some of those bridges limited for weight restrictions and so forth, and school buses and all?
Yes,
that
some
would
of them,
certainly make them PennDOT.
Some of them are limited, weight limited.
PennDOT.
but not inappropriately.
So I don't feel that my question was answered.
What's that?
About whether this person, who is the chair of the board, is allowed to take money from the project. My understanding of the GPA is that they're a pass-through entity, correct?
Yeah, let me tell you my interpretation of the services agreement between the General Purpose Authority and the county.
Okay.
My interpretation is that Mr. Langen is not entitled to receive any compensation for any work he may be doing as a member of the General Purpose Authority, whether it's additional work beyond what a chair of the General Purpose Authority has historically done or not.
So
That's
would that,
my interpretation.
And would
of it.
that also be the same for the solicitor of that same board?
That's my interpretation of it. I don't know why the solicitor of the General Purpose Authority would need to be participating in meetings between engineers regarding building bridges. It's absolutely unnecessary, and my interpretation of the services agreement between the General Purpose Authority and the county is that they're not entitled to be compensated for that expense.
And so I have one more question, and maybe, I don't know if this goes into Bob's committee because it's capital projects, but is there a way for us to get updates on the actual status of these bridges? Because I know, like, the Lower Saucon folks had a lot of questions about their bridge last week. We know that it was in the P3 as a rehab, but now it needs a whole. And so they have a lot of questions that I can't answer.
It's been
so
a
how
while
do we
since
get reports about
it's
that?
been a while since I read council's powers under the Home Rule Charter, but if I recall correctly, there's a subpoena power in there. It's not necessary to use because all you have to do is remind folks that you have the subpoena power, and they tend to show up and answer your questions. However, if they don't, you should subpoena them. I'm sorry to make more work for Mr. Spadone.
If I may, and maybe I just throw this out, and we can keep asking questions, because I had asked for, and I was given various minutes from the past from the GPA and from county council, and I think I mentioned to a few people, but Linda knows. At the June Finance Committee meeting, we are sending an invitation to the GPA to attend. Well, we're asking them to come, and we all know what can be done if they decide they don't need to accept our invitation.
If I might, pardon my lack of humility, you might want to invite Krieger and the third-party engineer as well.
We will send out the invitations.
Ron, as we often talk about these boards, Mr. Heckman, my apologies for my familiarity.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. The GPA are volunteers. They're just like the rest of our board members we discuss all the time. They're not experts in bridge building. So I think you bring the contractor and you bring the engineers. And
my main thrust on this, and I've had a chance to review some things.
Because you're paying the bills.
Well, and also, I mean, look.
And I want them to come and say that they don't have to tell you anything. I want them to do that.
They've taken on the role of like a co-county government with this bridge thing. I mean, we have problems filling out our finance because now they have to be part of that. I mean, to me, the whole thing was a cockamamie scheme. I assume some of the bills we've paid were for the patents they wanted to get or something.
Yes.
So I mean that's just.
For that.
I mean, I admit I've been around. Maybe things run smoother and better nowadays, but to me that's the wackiest stuff I've ever seen, and for all the years I was ever involved in county government. But having said that, it exists. It was voted on. My main thrust was I wanted to bring in Lucius Langen, and I know the people are volunteers, and most people that get on. Not everybody on that board may or may not. There's always somebody who has a strong ego and may pull these boards together.
You should be advised if you invite Mr. Lucius, you'll probably get a bill.
Yeah, Lucius is going to bill you.
Well, fine. You know what? He can bill us, and we'll treat it appropriately. But the thing is, I think, though, we can certainly include Krieger. And if you have any suggestions, you can pass them on. And we'll to Ms. Zembo, and we'll take a look. But I'm not concerned so much about every member having to show up, because I've been on these different boards too. But there are a few power players, I'll put it that way. And I think it's time that council invite them in, and we get a chance to talk to them about exactly what we've been talking about here. I mean, I just got the thing about the bridge that they said now if you want to switch the one bridge for the other bridge, and council hasn't responded, so what do you want us to do?
Well, they're their bridges.
Well, I'd like them to give them back to us, and we'd all be better off, but I don't know if that's going to happen. The thing is, We're going to invite him, and if you have any suggestions, please, your staff, pass them on to Ms. Zembo, and we'll talk about it. But I just wanted everyone to know that was something that we discussed, and I do plan to send out those invitations at the for the next meeting next month.
Let me just briefly. I know we don't all want to be here all night, but since we're discussing this,
Yeah.
I think it's important. Let me just briefly frame to you what the switch out, let's call it switch out of bridges issues are. We don't, just as a cursory matter, we don't know how much any particular bridge is budgeted at. We don't know how much they budgeted for Meadows Run. We don't know that. So how could we possibly discuss with them a now what was supposed to be a repair? I don't know how they're going to repair that bridge, but we can't possibly intelligently discuss with them how to replace that bridge. It's what, 100 feet, Charles? It's the longest bridge in the P3? Yeah, it's going to be an expensive bridge, and we think that it's probably a bridge that we'll have to get back from the General Purpose Authority and get it on the tip to pay for. It's going to be that expensive. So that's one issue. And they want another bridge. They want you to give them another one of their bridges so that they could say they're satisfying their end of the repairing and replacing.
That letter when they had all these options.
Yeah.
Their least favorite.
Likes-
Where's the administration on all these options?
He likes to write letters. So I'm going to tell you about the next one, which is the bridge that we jokingly referred to as Allen Township giving our bridge to FedEx. We've had a meeting with Rockefeller, and we've suggested the General Purpose Authority owns that bridge. They could negotiate with the General Purpose Authority to have that bridge repaired as it was replaced as it was originally intended to be, and Rockefeller could put in their turning lane. They could pay for that third lane to be put in. That's not our problem, but they want you to pay for that.
Well, I see they went to Allen Township.
They want you to pay
Allen
for that.
Township told them thanks, but no thanks as far as taking over the bridge.
So they want you to pay for that, just so you know. Outside of the P3, they want you to buy it, and they want you to give them another bridge to replace that one.
But they own the bridges.
Yes. So
Who gave
so
them the bridges?
their
They're responsible for the
their
bridges.
idea is their idea is to give us them back, and
Right, but it's
then we
not,
take
they're
care of
not
them.
our
and
bridges.
then you give them two.
This council gave them the bridges. We gave them the bridges. We don't own them. We don't have any say how they're built. All we have is $4 million every payment, here you go, so if they make their metrics. That's it.
Yes.
We have no say.
Yes.
They could come here and stare at us and not tell us anything because they don't have to.
Well,
We don't own the bridges. So, I mean, the whole thing's ridiculous, and we could do this exercise. I recommend nobody swaps any bridge out for them at all, and I think they should fix the Meadow Bridge. They picked it. They did an engineering study. We paid them $500,000 extra because I delayed their P3 being approved by council. So they should have known. They did their due diligence. Let them fix the bridges. Let them negotiate it.
Yeah, so,
Plus, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't think the general public understands also that they're no longer our bridges, because when I went to
they
the Saucon
understand.
Valley Partnership last week, and they're like, no, it's a county bridge, and to try to explain to folks, it's no longer a county bridge, it doesn't compute, they still think it's your bridge, you fix it. And so somehow that has to get communicated, that no, we no longer have purview over these bridges.
Tell them what day the meeting meets, what day P3 meets.
Go ahead.
I mean, is there any leverage in the fact that, they made their own choice that it could be repaired and not replaced and make them return it back to us, approved by PennDOT?
that is a long question, and the answer is it's complicated. But tonight, what I can tell you is we're doing our level best to make sure that the county lives up to its end of the bargain, so that we get the bridges that we bargained for, and such that we're planning on making the $4 million milestone payment in June. So, although I've characterized this project as a mess, and clearly tonight it's messier than ever, we're still going to do our very best to make sure it happens, and we're holding our end of it up.
But can we hold them to hold their end up, and the bridges that are going to need more work than they you know,
My my analysis of the contract that was entered into is a contract that leaves the county with fewer rights than you might otherwise expect from a $400 million government with lots of lawyers and business savvy to have entered into.
Mr. McGee.
No, I just want to follow up on Lori's comment. I think it is important that somehow we inform the public. I mean, if they would read everything, they would be informed as far as, but it maybe like a white paper or something, just to an understanding. You know, maybe that could, I don't know, really that's something the P3 should probably be doing, I guess.
Well,
I think they did some communications, didn't they, with some of their funds?
No, what they were communicating was offering the GPA services to other counties, or they were preparing to do this. And I know they were having meetings about this with other counties to pitch the services of the General Purposes Authority so that other counties and municipalities would come to Northampton County's GPA to have P3s done.
No, and I have a right to an opinion up there, it's not found, but I think they wanted to build a prison. I think they were thinking big term, looking down the road, selling their services across the board to be a way to bypass government regulations, bypass votes and all kinds
Oh
of
no,
things.
it's not your opinion. It's a fact that my predecessor was using.
I don't want lawyers to sharpen their pencils.
No,
when
so
I
you have limited legislative immunity, but it's not. It's a fact that my predecessor was using Mr. Lucius, who was also serving as the solicitor to the GPA, to make preparations to build the new prison at Gracedale. It's a fact. It's a proven fact.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'm sorry I opened that can of worms, but I do believe it needed to be discussed. The other question or item I had from my list of concerns is at our last meeting we heard that the retirement board had made a decision regarding payments for medical
Right.
from retirees' pension checks.
Right.
I guess my question is, was that a change of policy that they will no longer contribute, or I think you might have used the term that it was illegal. Now, my concern is if the action that Mr. Brackbill took 20 years ago was in fact illegal, are the retirees entitled to 20 years of payment for what may have been taken out illegally from their pension checks?
No.
Why not?
It's a multi-layered answer, and the retirement board hasn't addressed the second piece of this, but I can tell you where I think it's heading. What happened was the retiree representative, Mr. Seyfried, had shown us the law with respect to reducing post-retirement benefits. And so what the practice had been in Northampton County was to have your medical plan, your post-retirement medical plan, be contributed to by reducing your retirement check. That technically is not lawful. You can't do that. It's not necessarily so that the retirement board had that brought to it, and we did the right thing. We're ending that practice. That isn't the same issue, which I think Mr. Seyfried conflates, that it is unlawful to ask the retiree to make a contribution to their post-retirement benefits. That level of contribution is in dispute. So if someone was a zero contributor when they retired, it's zero in retirement. That's just the way it is. But if someone was a 1.5% contributor, it may be appropriate to ask them to continue to contribute in that fashion. It's just not appropriate to deduct it from their retirement check without their consent.
So moving forward, the retirees will have the option then to either have it deducted from their pension check or write a check on their own? How would that
That'll
work?
be up to the pension board, but one of the things that I could anticipate being suggested to the board would be sending a letter asking them to consent to have the particular percentage withdrawn from their check again, or send them a bill.
Okay.
Yeah, I sitting on the board, Mr. Safely brought this up, and I think and frankly, you had, I think, at least three lawyers sitting in that board meeting, I was unaware of this, but I think they all agreed that just that standalone Act 53 was happening illegally now, and that's how the board voted. Now, where it goes from there, as the executive pointed out, I think is going to be an ongoing discussion. Because, yeah, I think they're.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, my concern was twofold. A, if people had this money deducted illegally, well, then they're rightfully entitled to that money.
And that was sort of part of the discussion, but it was getting so involved, I think it was said, okay, we have to abide by the law. Now, going forward, what happens? And I believe that'll probably be brought up, probably be part of it.
So to answer your question, it's my opinion that it isn't, but there are other people who have opinions that it is, and I would tell you there are defenses to those claims.
Yes.
That's only their health benefits post-retirement, which we have eliminated. So eventually, yeah, 6 or 7 years ago, we eliminated
I
those.
thought it was later than that. It was
Stouffer's
under
era.
Stouffer.
2010.
Yeah, 09, 10, yeah.
Oh, we weren't
Yeah,
giving
the
them-
10.
10.
We
I
eliminated
think.
post-retirement health benefits,
Post-retirement health benefits in.
which are taken out of their pension check, which will no longer.
So anyone hired after the
Any-
effective date of the ordinance is
Yeah.
no longer entitled to
Mm-hmm.
post-retirement.
Right, and the only reason why this became an issue was Prayer executive raised it to 5%.
But that,
And then they
my
started to complain
understanding,
about
my
it.
understanding is that's not accurate.
Well,
But-
whatever percentage it was raised to, when they changed the health care for everybody, they raised the retirees' percentage, because they didn't care when it was 1%, 2%. Nobody complained for 30 years or 20 years. Just when it got high, and it was several $100s a month.
I will tell you this, the retirement board is going to work on it.
Yes.
We'll have an answer for you. The other thing about the post-retirement benefits and be ended after 2010, that won't be an issue for anyone who's here. We have plenty of retirees.
Okay. Well, that's it, let's move on.
Thank you, you have a lot of work to do, I'm sorry.
Okay, we can start the meeting now?
Yeah, Chris, would you think about this, just ponder this question. We always talk about how counties, council votes can't do something that'll encumber a future council or something. That's been brought up or passed something. What about handing the bridges over to a third-party entity?
It cost us $100
I
million.
mean, I don't know. Now, I know we've said we're honoring a contract with Krieger. We're not gonna mess with that.
That'll
That's
cost us $400 million.
But as far as the authority goes, I just wonder if, in fact, what our options are moving forward with the GPA.
May I say something? Have you read the contract with Peter yet?
Yeah, it's about that thin.
Yeah, I've read it.
Okay, well, before we enter into any of those discussions, we have to sit down and review that. Because that could take us down a road we don't want to go.
Well, it was just a question. It was not an action to take, just a question I had for Mr. Solicitor.
Well, I have a question about going back to when Mr. Crowe was speaking about and Mr. Barron. They faulted, is that a breach of contract that they fault on not giving us information or statistics or figures that cause us a problem with our own?
Should be.
My own interpretation of the contract?
Yeah.
No.
Because in section 18.
The contract is that bad, Mr. Warner. It really is.
I realize how bad it was, because I was there for the meetings and I wrote down that we had those executive sessions. But there are things that happen that there should be reciprocity for our county to be able to respond to, rather than having them always have to keep up their handle. I know there's a contract.
They have almost no obligations in the contract. It's really pathetic.
Well, everybody pack a lunch, sharpen your pencils,
June.
read your information, and let's see what happens in the finance committee meeting in June.
Better be the only thing on the agenda.
Yeah, well, that's why I talked about it. So if you have thoughts about finance in June, forget it. Even Mr. Barron might be turned down.
Want to cancel the personnel meeting that night?
We'll figure something
Okay.
out.
Personnel's only 5
All
minutes
right,
long.
let's get rolling. I think we've had discussions courtesy of the floor. We're going to go to discussion regarding Article 13 contracts. And the first one is the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania. That's a contract with them for property liability insurance, and that amount is, what, $745,873. All right. Any questions, any issues?
Motion to recommend tomorrow evening.
Yeah, and I second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Good job. All right. Next one we have is with Gilmore and Associates, and that is feasibility study requiring an expanded scope of work, and it's for an additional $4,700. The new contract is now $69,057.72. Questions on the motion?
Motion to recommend tomorrow evening. Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Next one is two-way communications, and that is for, let's see, how many is it, as far as services? $114,970 for consoles and the logging recorder, $204,931.57. Any questions? Sir?
Mr. Chairman, Todd Weaver is here, and I would like him to tell us what these thingies do. What does this stuff do?
Even side next general.
Yeah. Zybex consoles, what are those?
These are physically the dispatch positions that the dispatchers sit at, that we put in all the computers and the radios and that. We have to add 4 additional consoles for the City of Bethlehem consolidation, and we have to shrink up 2 of the pods to make room for that, so we have a total complement of 18 seats in the comm center. Zybex is the manufacturer of the console. They raise, they lower, they're ergonomical. They match our existing consoles that were installed, so that's why it's...
They have all the cameras and stuff for the city of Bethlehem. You're monitoring the cameras for all the streets through that console and everything?
Nope, City of Bethlehem Public Service Center is monitoring their cameras, and they're going to work on a project for when there's 911 calls, that we can probably view those cameras at the same time.
Could you give us, since you brought up the Bethlehem consolidation, could you maybe give us a quick update as to where you are and when that switch is going to be flipped and how you believe that process will go?
As far as, there's no physical switch, anything, but as far as that is, we're constantly, it doesn't go a week or a day by that we don't talk about the City of Bethlehem consolidation. One of our biggest things during the consolidation is putting the equipment in place to accept the City of Bethlehem. Right now, some of the challenges is allowing them to stay whole with their personnel until we can get equipment in place. So we constantly are talking, seeing where their staff is, looking at some ways to supplement or back them up with some personnel or some services, why we get this equipment in. Right now, we have the ability that we can remote answer 911 calls for the City of Bethlehem, and we're kind of training on their CAD. So we're kind of have Plan A and the consolidation and looking to do that, and July of 19th is when their funding ends. I would foresee the consolidation probably transitioning sooner than that. So as soon as equipment is in, that's when things will really start rocking and rolling and looking at trying to just wrap up that consolidation with the City of Bethlehem.
Yeah, I believe at one point Mr. McClure said there were some personnel challenges. Have those been resolved?
They're resolved. They're stable at this point. We talk back and forth with the City of Bethlehem. We have monthly meetings of where they're at with personnel, and part of it is just with staffing. With looking at a center that's closing, it is hard for them to maintain their staffing and not having people retire and just look, to move to other places or comm centers, or they may apply to us. So at the same time, we're looking to help have ways and the technology in there that we can help them from where we're at and remote answer and help them actually dispatch and kind of do a joint effort and kind of do a smooth transition in that. And at the same time we're doing that, we send supervisors down there for training and that to learn their system. So we're kind of integrating and learning their ways and their methods. And a lot of it we realize that, we all speak the same language, we may just call it a different widget.
Will we be taking on any of their personnel, or I guess the problem may be if someone's got a certain number of years, they may want to continue working for the city of Bethlehem to stay in the pension fund
Yeah,
or
those
some.
personnel that are willing to come over to county, we encourage them to apply, and we run them as we do with the candidates, and vet them also with the city of Bethlehem's recommendations and stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
So operationally, though, as a time frame, things are going smoothly, you feel, at this point?
The equipment's not happening quick enough, in my opinion, and a lot of that is just PEMA funding, projects, and procurement, and that just
Okay.
it tends to slow us down.
But your working relationship with Bethlehem
Yes,
is
it's
pretty
very
smooth?
well. Mr. Deringer's in on the meetings. We have minutes that we share, and we kind of collaborate back and forth. Some of the other stuff is to talk about radio infrastructure now that we're hitting that step and doing a joint project in a radio console, because we got to be able to dispatch on their radio infrastructure, which is a P25 system. So our radio consoles, the buttons we push to talk to the fire and EMS, we have to have the ability at our center, and that's one of the steps that we're at right now.
I'll take your
Sooner
word
the
for
better.
everything you just said. And with Mr. Dertinger involved, I'm sure it'll go smoothly. I think Ms. Ferraro and I want to say we certainly don't need another 911 debate or discussion.
Can I add something?
Sure, go.
I just want to call out Mr. Weaver. About a month and a half ago, I went on the website. I signed up for a tour, and he was very thorough with his tour at his facility. He introduced me to all his staff, and I was very impressed with the things that they got going on over there. And he actually took the time to he explained how the whole Bethlehem transaction was. So I encourage anybody to go over there. It was an eye opener. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your compliment. The other item that we mixed, we talked
I'll
about.
tell you, the
buyback.
real eye opener was Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah, Hurricane Sandy.
Wasn't that
every
fun?
event is special in its way.
Yeah.
March 2nd was fun too, and last night was also fun. So
I can imagine.
um,
All right, well.
Okay.
the
Thank
other
you.
item
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
was
ahead.
the recorder.
Oh,
Our
the recorder,
original
yes, I'm sorry.
Recorder. This is our logging recorder. that
Consoles and
records
recorder.
All of our 911 calls, all of our radio traffic. The original one was installed in 2010. We have to put in a new recorder so it's compatible with a P25 trunked radio system, which the City of Bethlehem has. So we got to be able to record talk groups and our conventional talk groups here at the Comm Center. So this is all of these projects are part of the PEMA funding of the 15% fund grants. That's why we're here before you to spend the money that PEMA gave us. And part of this is also a regional share project where we have disaster recovery and using hardware components at Lehigh, and they're doing the same back and forth. So we're kind of backing up each other and adding a little bit more resiliency as we hopefully take a little bit advantage of the state funding us for this consolidation, add a little bit extra robustness to the center.
Did you have something?
I'll just say this. I think one of the things that's nice is this is actually a funded mandate, something that we don't see very often when we get these mandates that come from state and or federal government.
It's been a fight and a push, and so far it's been all right.
So,
And Mr. Weaver is very good at finding grant money, which, as everyone knows, Lamont loves grants.
Yes, I heard that.
How long do we keep the recordings?
What's that?
There is a piece, though, that is not going to be funded with grant money, right?
Yes.
FEMA money.
I just
And
wondered
that's
what the regs are.
Yeah.
Explain that to us. Just heads up.
Part of the issue with PEMA and the argument, even at the state advisory level, is whether radio infrastructure is a covered expense or not. Well, I can tell you I will beg to differ with PEMA, and so will a lot of us that are in the public safety community. So part of the argument, and we will probably apply for it anyhow and allow them to deny us, is the acquisition of the City of Bethlehem radio infrastructure. It does have worth, it does have cost to it, so we got to properly evaluate it and look at a fair exchange, whether it's services, monetary value, or however the people above my pay grade decide how they want to negotiate that out. But that is one of the things that PEMA argues back.
My question was, what do the regs say? How long do you have to keep a recording?
Recording, we're required to hold a recording for 30 days. Only 30 days. Wow. We actually hold it longer than that, just because of the technology has changed through the years, and they didn't really change the legislation on that.
You have a teraflops of information on disks all over the place to figure out how to keep all those recordings.
Most of it is stored in massive.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought you
Digitally.
had to keep them for years.
Yep. When they're subpoenaed or held for court, then that's when the record is actually pulled and then held. But as far as the daily recordings that aren't requested for investigations and that, they roll off.
Any other questions for Todd? How'd your dad, say hello to your dad, and
I
is he
will.
still diving?
No.
Okay. That nut is. All right, thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend this to full council tomorrow night.
Is there a second? All right, moved and seconded. All right, let's move on. KC Mechanical, repairs to kitchen floor in the jail, and we're looking at $176,000. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, do I have a motion to move it on? Got to fix, you got to fix. Who's on the committee?
Motion to move ahead to tomorrow.
Seconded. Okay. All right. Moved and seconded. We're going to do that. All right. Now we're on to Johnson, Merriman, and Thompson. And this is the master site development plan to include the proposed 160-acre golf farm, county park, and planning, site analysis, and engineering for the 7-mile Plainville Township Recreation Trail. And that is $178,500 for phase 1 and 2. Any discussion? Questions? Going once?
This is coming from Act 13 funding, am I correct in that? So it's not general fund money? I guess I'll just say something that I've always said with some of these studies and master plans. I hope that if we in fact do this, that there is a commitment to move forward on this, because often what happens is a lot of money is spent, we got a lot of nice glossy brochures and a PowerPoint presentation, and then it sits on a shelf.
My understanding is Brian Coop will be here tomorrow to address this. Yeah, to give us a glossy on it.
And I have heard golf farms since Gerald Seiferd's day.
And that's a long, long time.
Yes.
Okay. So, having said that, motion,
So moved.
second, Mr. Werner seconds. Moved and seconded, let's move that along. Now we're going to manpower, and that's for temporary personnel services. And the total amount will depend on actual temporary employment and placements, anticipated expenditures based on the average of 2016 and 2017 is $130,000 per year. For total contract for 3 years estimated at $390,000. Recommendation letter from the Director of Human Resources is attached. Questions, concerns, motion?
Just a question. Have we used them before? Is this?
Yes, as a matter of fact,
So this is just a continuation, essentially, of...
yes, and that number is kind of, thank you. That number is based on past usage. I looked at our past usage in terms of actual number of people. It's not that many people, really. As we only get manpower temps when there's a need that is so urgent that we can't wait for the career service process or other process.
The elections office, like on presidential elections, I think that's where we've used them. That's my recollection of the most common.
There's one accounting clerical in the Human Services Department now because civil service takes time, and right now they're changing systems. They take even more time. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion moved and seconded. We'll move that on to tomorrow. And now let's go to Eckert, Siemens, Sharon, and Marriott, Harrisburg. Oh, is that Merlot? Oh, excuse me, Merlot. And that's for outside legal counsel for labor and employment. Based on the actual services provided, this total amount is for a 3-year term with an optional 1 year. It's estimated at $600,000. Questions?
Yeah, another one. So is Eckert the only one we're hiring? I thought we were going to keep Tom Heimbach's firm.
Well, initially, I'll tell you, we got 5 responses to our request for proposals. We got one from the Heimbach law firm, and I happen to know Tom Heimbach personally and consider him an excellent labor lawyer. But it's not a vote against his skill, merely a vote that there are 13 bargaining units here, and it seemed that Eckert Siemens was in a much better position to service us well with 13 bargaining units than Tom's Flam, Walton, and Heimbach, I believe they're called, firm. They have more people, and more people with labor law knowledge and experience.
And we used to have Ballard Spar. Did they bid, or we still have them under contract?
They were not one of the bidders, I can tell you that. I believe, I'm not so sure the one person that's still doing a little bit of work that couldn't be done by our solicitor's office. I'm not so sure if he still works for Ballard Spar, because the letterhead I see on his letter is different. But there is one gentleman, William Kennedy, who I believe was once affiliated with them, who was right. Yeah, that one, and there's one other case. That's a discrimination case that he's handling.
And that would be the, any other questions, concerns, issues? All right, do I have a motion? Anybody?
No, I'll be a no vote.
All right, well, I second it, so we'll move that along, and we'll see where we're at.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to a review of I believe, the controller's reports. And the first one is the Schrin Real Estate Trust. Mr. Zaborski has graced us with his presence, I guess, to explain this. So, any discussion? No one. Mr. Zaborski, go right ahead.
Thank you. We have two follow-ups tonight. The first one, the Schrin Real Estate Trust Memo of Understanding. We recommended an annual report and analysis should be prepared listing property sales, the components of the net sale price, and the farmland preservation contribution amount. This would allow comparison to previous land sales, serve as a planning tool for county management, and a status report for county council. The corrective action was the spreadsheet has always been maintained on each parcel, and on the Memo of Understanding, proceeds for each sale. Paperwork from Schrin's attorney is maintained for each sale, as well as they all contain a settlement sheet for the sale. The worksheet was obtained from the Fiscal Affairs on January 30th, 2018, and reviewed. The Director of Fiscal Affairs, Mr. Barron, verbally committed to discuss the report concerning proceeds from the Schrin TIF at a council meeting in 2018. Corrective action has been taken. No further follow-up is planned. The second recommendation is that the basis and operation of the program, including a summary of key items in the Memo of Understanding, should be documented, and should the record keeping of contributions. An additional person should be cross-trained in the background and procedures involved with the Memo of Understanding in the event of the fiscal administrator's absence. Now, a procedure on processing of the Memo of Understanding payment received from the sale of a parcel is maintained in a Word document in Fiscal Affairs. A copy of the procedure was sent in the response memo from the Director of Fiscal Affairs. The Director of Fiscal Affairs also stated that the procedure was reviewed with the Budget Administrator and a Deputy Assessment Manager. Corrective action has been taken. No further follow-up is planned. Any questions on that one?
Any questions? Mr. Zaborski, I guess you can go to the next one.
The next one is a preventive maintenance program audit. That audit was done on October the 4th, and we had two recommendations. Number one, in our audit, we noted that the County Administrative Code assigns the responsibility or maintenance of motor vehicles to the Department of Public Works, but the Human Resource Procedures and Policies Manual assigns the duty to individual departments operating the vehicles. We recommended that the county decide which entity should be responsible. We believe it makes sense to have the user's department responsible for maintenance of vehicles they operate. We discussed the matter with Steve Barron, Director of Fiscal Affairs. He agreed with our belief that and agreed to strike the wording assigning the duty to the Department of Public Works from the Administrative Code in the current rewrite and present to Council for their approval. We will follow up again in 6 months to determine the status of the finding. The second recommendation, we recommend that the Public Works issue a semi-annual report to Council regarding the preventive maintenance program using issue track reports, which provide summaries of issues handled. We discussed the matter with Michael O'Malley, Director of Public Works. He agreed that it is possible to produce reports from the issue track system showing the number of preventive maintenance issues completed over a given time period. He approached council, which still expressed the desire to receive such reports. He said he would present 2 reports per year to council. Since corrective action is being taken, no further follow-up is planned on that one. That concludes the 2 follow-up reports.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Kusick?
Just one on the motor vehicle
Yes.
maintenance. The late Wayne Grube always used to ask, would it be beneficial for us to have a designated fleet manager? Is that something that I see Steve shaking his head. Why not?
I think that answers your question. We didn't discuss that in our audit, but Steve would know.
You can't do the amendments.
I understand that.
Does that.
But they're not here.
Very
Oh. Well, wait, we have
You
2.
can't do anything until
I
after.
understand that.
insurance.
Well, this is Matt's. I know this is Matt's.
This is Matt.
Okay, so those duties are, in fact.
There are people doing it. There-
It's just
we
a
don't have
certain, just to give a brief update. It's not
I'm
really to
gonna ask
discuss
him
the
to do that.
ordinance in detail. It's just to give a brief update.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Concerns? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know we have any actions to take on this. So, what about this one?
This is Matt's, this is Bill's, this is Bill's.
All right.
And that's,
Okay, we're going to move forward, moving right along. Good. And now what we're going to do is discussion regarding an amendment to the Home Rule Charter, Article 7 regarding finance, and this was an ordinance that Mr. Dietz had put forward, and I'm going to let him say a few words before we can have any discussion.
Sure. So just that we had tabled the other one with some corrections and amendments from Mr. Spadoni, so to make it a clean presentation and just the overall intent of the ordinance is that anytime the county would take on debt outside of its normal operations of something for gracedale, something for the prison, it would have to go out to voter approval for it. It follows a state statute that came into effect after Lehigh County took on a bond for the Iron Pig Stadium. It was put forward so that if such a big project was to go on that would benefit either a 501c3 or private entity that was outside the general scope of the county's duties, voter approval would be required for it. A lot of the verbiage worked on with the previous solicitor and the current one was to ensure it didn't affect items like when Lafayette was up here or the hospitals were up here for it. And that's why I specifically asked them when the questions on there is that, while we, I don't know what the right word is, we sponsor or approve or recommend the bonds that they take out for it using, we're not on the hook for it at all. So when the college or the hospital takes the bonds out, should they default on them, it does not come back on the taxpayer, which keeps them out of the fears of this. So,
any questions about this amongst ourselves or from Mr. Dietz? I promised I would look into it. I have read it up. I'm just concerned. I guess I'm just a little confused in the sense of, and maybe the administration has a thought on this. Would this somehow hinder doing some of these things? I mean, we're going to have to go out and we're going to have a vote. I don't know. Can I get some? I mean, I'd like actually some clarification. And Mr. Dietz, I spoke with him about this.
My thoughts are this. I think that, if ever we were to get involved in the stadium business, which unfortunately a previous executive did, much to my dismay as a former township supervisor in Williams Township, if we were to ever get involved in that it would require voter approval before debt was encumbered to get involved in anything like that. Lehigh County has adopted something similar. My sense is that, generally, I don't see any downside to adopting this and letting the voters decide if we do want one of these big economic development projects to be based on county-issued debt.
Yeah, I want to reiterate, it's outside of general county scope items, so it would not apply to needing to fix Gracedale, needing to fix the prison. It's stuff that we would, you would think we need to act fast on. There'd be no reason that we'd have to do something within that it couldn't fall in with enough time to get on the primary or general election for something outside of the general scope of the county.
I have a big problem with this. We are a representational democracy. You're elected to do your job, and your job is to do the bidding for the people who elected you to come here. And now you want to turn around and say you can't do your job, that you want the people of the county to have another election to approve what you want to do. And I think it's foolish. We tabled this last year. We tabled it again this year, and you keep coming back for the same darn thing, like we're going to build a stadium or something tomorrow morning. I just find there's no reason for this. If you don't want to be part of a representational democracy, don't run for office. Don't do your job. Don't do the due diligence. I can't see the general public, not saying that they don't know what's going on, but if that were to happen, we'd have some pretty extensive knowledge of what the plan is and what's going on and the financing and everything going forward that the general public wouldn't even be privy to. I mean, you could put it out on the paper, and a classic example is the P3. Like Peg says, the people don't know that we don't own the bridge, or whoever said that. Yeah, it's been out there a million times that we don't own the bridges and nobody knows we don't own them. Come on. So now you want to have people vote for some kind of huge economic thing that we're not even going to do, just on the off chance that we're going to do it sometime down the road in some future endeavor that nobody even knows, in a hypothetical situation that nobody can even, ascertain right now. So I will motion to table this tomorrow like I did before. I mean, you had a Republican council that put it in the garbage can where it belongs, and you'll probably have a Democratic council do the same thing. So I totally disagree with it. I think you keep coming to the trough for the same thing, whether you rewrite it or you make it a little different. It's the same idea. We're a representational democracy, not a what's a democracy called when it's always everything's voted for by people? Theocracy.
People's democracy.
Whatever. You're here to do this job. So I say we should do our job, and I just say no. So.
Can I ask you, are you formally moving to table this now, or is there?
No, I can't formally move the table until it goes to council. I mean, if I were on the committee, I would put a motion forward not to even approve it to go forward.
From a procedural standpoint, I believe it was tabled, so it would have to be a motion.
This is a different one.
This is a new word.
Oh, this is a reintroduction.
Yes, and
okay.
Unlike Mr. Kraft had said, it was tabled so that it could be, by his recommendation, to put forward a clean one with the amendment. So it's not like it's a continuing, keep bringing one up on there. And it was tabled the last administration by Mr. Phillips and I because we didn't want it to be a partisan situation. We wanted it to be aired out. We wanted to air any concerns from the GPA and other entities out there, which is why it was tabled, not because it didn't have support.
Even Mr. Phillips saw the foolishness of the ordinance.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Although I think Mr. Kraft didn't ask it as a question, but I did want to ask, what is your bottom line intent for this? Because we are elected to make these kind of decisions and hopefully make the decisions to not encumber the constituents of the county. So what are you really looking?
Like the P3
well, first of all, as a resident and constituent of the county, I wouldn't consider myself, if I was not on here, encumbered to say, do you want to be responsible for taking on debt for something outside of the county duties? And again, and I'm going to go back to it, and just an example of that would have been the Da Vinci Center down there, which is, we sat there debated about giving them $1 million for it, and it was 50-50 whether or not we were going to do that. And at the very last second, it popped to $10 million over 40 years, and it was approved. It's not inconceivable to think that 5 members and an executive would have thought, this is such a good plan, we're going to take out a $20 million bond for it because we think it's that important to go forward.
We weren't going to take out a bond. That was paid for by hotel tax.
Well, no,
money.
but it's not inconceivable to say that the administration could have said, this is such a good project, and the 5 members that jumped from $1 million to the $10 million would have said, this is going to be good economic support for it, and we're going to go with it.
Well, they
And-
did
and-
say, yeah. That's why
But I'm
we
saying, but
killed
they-
it this year.
Well, no, and I'm with you on that. But and the other point to it is there is, for the rest of the county outside of Bethlehem, you can very easily get an administrator, a county administrator, and a plurality of council members that are from Bethlehem and want to take out a bond that would not be beneficial to the whole county. It falls through, and the whole county taxpayers are on the hook for it. And that's why I think that it is fair to have the something outside of our core functions of what we're elected to do, which is provide the human services, the gracedale in the prison, that the voters should not have a say in taking on debt.
I'd like to recognize Mr. McClure, our county executive. We're having fun today, so I'm forgetting things. Sorry, Mr. McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Dietz, I think it's perfectly within your prerogative and within your power and your duty to offer the amendments to the charter when you think you should offer them. I disagree with you about this one, though, unfortunately. The fact of the matter is, I could never, and I think you know this, I could never see myself borrowing money for a private entity to do something that you envision might happen. But as you rightly note, I won't always be here, never's a mighty long time. Maybe the stock exchange wants to come to Williams Township, or the Yankees want to move there. And then we might want to have. I'm a Phillies fan, by the way, but we would take the Yankees. I just want to be clear.
I'm a Mets fan. So.
Yeah. Well, we might not take the Mets. We might let the Mets.
As
stay
to
where
the
they are.
point. As to the point.
But my point is, if the stock exchange were to move here, some wonderful opportunity, I would hate to see that opportunity be forestalled by a low turnout no vote on a referendum question. So I think this is a solution to a problem that definitely doesn't exist in the short term, probably won't exist in the long term, but Lehigh County, and I realize it was a big risk, and we talk about Coca-Cola Park all the time, but I don't think anyone regrets that.
Well, except for the team that they left in New York that's still sitting on debt up there for a stadium that doesn't have a team that plays there anymore. Ottawa.
Well, unfortunately, with the competition between economic regions, there are winners and losers, and I don't want to get so far sidetracked that we're here all night, but that's the argument against FLRTAs and TIFs and KOZs and CRISs and NISs, and because there are winners and losers. If someone moves across the river to take advantage of the NIS benefit, there's a loser, right? There are Schuylkill County isn't getting real estate property tax revenue that we're getting because we in the Lehigh Valley have been so warehouse friendly, over the past decade or so. So it's there are winners and losers.
Well, I agree, and same thing. So the Iron Pigs, whatever.
But Allentown definitely won.
They did, but so say the Iron Pigs were wooed away from them by competitive, that they went over to New Jersey. Now there's an Iron Pig stadium that's sitting there with a bond on it without a team playing there.
I agree with you. There's a considerable risk. I would not take it lightly, but I appreciate what you're doing, and I just don't agree.
Thank you, Mr. As anybody else? Let me just say, I looked at this, and I have to. I agree with Mr. McClure, though, in the sense that as a councilman, you have every right and responsibility to put forward whatever you believe in. And it's not like, I don't think it's crazy. It's your opinion how to do things. I happen to disagree for some of the reasons given. I was here when that stadium business came up, and I remember, Ms. Farrar may remember, Mr. Brackville pitched us a Field of Dreams in Bethlehem Township. And we were about as excited with that as we ended up being with the modern Stonehenge over in Williams Township. So I would think, and your point about the stadium makes sense, but I don't think Northampton County elected officials would be as charmed by Mr. Cunningham's dulcet tones when he speaks as Lehigh County commissioners are with his charming personality. I think we would, I know how I would react if Mr. McClure came and said, hey, would you guys give us money for a stadium or for God knows what else? So I personally, I don't support this at this time, but that being said, I think every councilman has a right, council person, to have something brought to a vote. You've had this tabled a few times, so is there a motion to move this forward?
It's going to go forward.
Well, it's going to go forward anyway. Well, I'm not going to support it, but certainly. So it's there, and but you know, I hear what you're saying. I just it's sort of like the raises, you know. And it's been, how can we do this because we don't give ourselves or we won't vote. Even if you vote yes or no, I think that's our responsibility. I don't want to see an automatic thing. I think you got to person up and either vote yes or no for the things you're responsible for up here. And if somebody says, I don't want to vote for you in the next election because of it, so be it. I mean, that's life, and we all see what happens in elections. So, all right, that'll move on till tomorrow, and let us move on to the next ordinance, which was introduced by Mr. McGee and myself, and that's the amendment to the Administrative Code, Article 13, and, wait.
No, it's the...
I'm sorry, the wait, which one am I? Did I jump one? I jumped one, sorry.
You're good here.
Yeah, I have Mr. Kraft disease. I'm jumping over things. All right, relax. All right, ordinance providing for the adoption of certain procedures for contracts. And I think we had a lot of discussion on this. Any questions, comments, issues?
Yeah, I guess I think this isn't a bad thing. I think the one question I have is that there's extensive references to the contractor responsibility certification, but I don't see that document attached or included as an exhibit. Is that something that we currently have, or is there something that we could look at?
I appreciate that detail, and I did provide procurement. I provided Mr. Barron with a sample of one.
Yeah,
but,
could we see that?
I didn't know if they were going to produce it for this or if it was going to be. And what it would be is just a signature sign-off sheet, basically, I attest to. I did provide him with a sample one, and I could certainly get that. Say again?
The same sheet we do now?
It's probably similar, I think, because he did recognize the form. And
he can bring it tomorrow.
Yeah, is that something that purchasing has, or how would that work?
Getting a lot of airtime today, Mr. Brown.
I am. So the sample form just basically restates everything that's in here. What I talked with Mr. McGee about are the timing, like the days and stuff like that, which I think you're going to discuss tomorrow, because council meets every 2 weeks, and there are some 5-day requirements in there that Mr. McGee and I discussed. This is, again, for larger projects. I will make sure that there's a copy of the resuscitation here, or that you get a copy of it tomorrow, so that you can review it before the meeting. It basically restates everything that's in here. And remember, the county enters into contracts with the general contractor. We don't go for larger projects. We don't have contracts with a subcontractor, but they would still be bound under this language to acquire that and make sure that their subcontractors follow this rule, which I think is a good thing. We don't have to look back far into our past to remember the parking deck debacle, and lowest bidder isn't always the best. So, but yeah, I will make sure that that's available to you.
Yeah. And then just one other thing, and within that contractor responsibility certification, or within this ordinance, is there a requirement that the contractor and the subcontractor verify or certify that all of their employees are U.S. citizens or green card holders?
We do that now as a matter of course. In Article 13 for contracting, E-Verify is part of what they do, and that's part of their responsibilities. It's on all of our bid specs, and it's actually part of the process to go through when we sign the contract. Now, the follow-up for that really is incumbent upon the county to do. Sometimes we do that very well, sometimes we don't. But one of the what is really nice about this is it includes language that says if you have certain violations within a certain period of time, you're certifying that you do not, and if you're found to, you either rectify the situation or you move on to the next responsible bidder, which is something that we are lacking now, which I think this sort of corrects for the larger projects. So if people are found to be cheating the system, so to speak, that now the county has a level of recourse.
Well, then I'll support this.
I support this. It may be in here, and I've read, but I may have missed it, but is there something in here that warns us against
The change order language is in our contracts based on the project. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with contracts, there's nothing really that can protect you from the change orders. We look to write the contracts in a way that limits them, but that's again on a project-by-project, contract-by-contract basis. Council always does, yes.
Mr.
So overall, I think it's good, and I did get the other original styles from Linda on procurement, and I think it does clean up some stuff in there. The issue I have is with the number 11, the requirement of the apprenticeship requirement for it in there, and to say that that there's a firm that doesn't have a apprenticeship program is not qualified to work on it on a project. I disagree with. I could very well see a drywall painting construction company that's been family run, gone down through, and they don't per se have a participate in a Class A apprenticeship program for the last 3 years. Therefore, we're not qualifying to work on it. So, with that in there, I think that I think honestly that we really limit and it's not really open to full bids or requests to do jobs. So personally, I'd like to see that pulled out on there for me to support it.
Yeah, just to counter that, I don't understand that, but my background, we're paying the same amount of dollars, maybe not the same bid, but we're going to pay prevailing wage on a county project over $25,000, and I just think it's important to add that educational piece. The professional people there's a lot of apprenticeships out there. There's apprenticeships in manufacturing. There's apprenticeships with, and there's even a little piece in here that says if you have the experience from the military, that and if it's deemed qualified by you can actually use that. If they can prove that their military experience has deemed them competent.
But with that company, so you hire someone that has, and I fully support that. Hire someone in the military who has a background and has that. But just because they hired that person in the military, does that company have a Class A apprenticeship program for the last 3 years?
Right, correct. Well, there is a lot of companies out there that do have.
But does it? So if I start a painting company and I'm going to I'm going to do something over at the prison, and it's a $300,000 project. I hire strictly veterans that painted naval ships in the Navy. I'm going to get them to do it. But so just because I hired them, does my company have a Class A apprenticeship program? No, it's a question.
I understand your difference.
It's a question. I mean,
right?
Would the company? It would not.
Yeah.
Even though I hired someone that had the experience in that.
As I read it. Right.
No, I was just going to say it's for larger contracts, so you want qualified people that went through an apprenticeship program or something there equivalent to do the job, so you don't get legacy cost on your project. And a $300,000 paint job in a prison isn't a small job.
Well, exactly. I realize it's not a small job. So it could very easily get to that cost. And if I hired all veterans off the Navy that painted ships, I'm not in an apprenticeship program, but there's still very well able, qualified people to paint it.
But painting ships is just needle blasting and putting oil paint back on the bare rust. I mean, it's a total. Listen. I don't think the apprenticeship program is a killer for me on this. Qualified contractors who are bidding bigger projects, because we have none coming down the pike. But if we did, you'd want it built by the best people that we can find paying the same price. And I know a lot of people that have, from my experience, apprenticeship programs that aren't really apprenticeship programs, and they have really lousy people who do the work, and they don't care, and it's not their job. They're just there to fill time to get a job for the next 3 months, and then they're out again. And if you have an apprenticeship program, it's kind of a career track, and that person is more like an electrician or pipe fitter or whatever they are. They care about their job. They have some kind of care of what they're doing. And when you don't have it, and you're just a fly-by-night contractor who's going to bid these jobs and lowball it and not pay prevailing wage or whatever way you're going to get around it, we're killing ourselves. So I don't think the apprenticeship is a killer for me. So I'm going to support this 100%.
And so fundamentally, I like the idea of an apprenticeship program. I have my son going through CIT because I think there's different tracks for different people, and I think it's great for it. I tried to bring the company that I work for because they're not political, but they've been around since '64 building barges and ships, and don't per se have an apprenticeship program. Now they have people that are retiring after 40, 50 years of being with the company from when it started, and they reward people and they hire the best of the best and to be one of 4 companies in the nation that do what they do and do contracts in the Navy and that. And to think that because they don't per se have this qualification of apprenticeship program, they're not qualified to go out and do deep ocean recovery, I don't agree.
Right, but we don't have any oceans in Northampton County.
All right.
There is one more, Mr. Heckman, one more thing.
Yes, go ahead.
And there is I understand your concern, but I also understand the taxpayers in Northampton County and the responsible contracting piece, and I think missing that piece would leave a hole in the responsibility piece. I've had a lot of professional experience in the construction industry, and I've seen firsthand how untrained workers can be brought up into on a project, and they don't know what's going on. Can they do some of it? Yeah, but it just depends on how many of those unskilled that they bring in at one setting. And I think that was one of the situations that I read about on the parking deck. The firm from Ohio or Chicago that came in, they couldn't find anybody. They have to satisfy a contract. They're going to do whatever they have to do. And it just adds that responsibility piece. But I certainly understand your concern, and that's why another reason why we thought to move the threshold up to $250,000. The larger scale projects that really have lawsuits, counties, contracts. I just thought it would help minimize.
Yeah, in line with this, when Mr. McGee first brought it up to me, I was concerned with the smaller, and we talked about that. As far as like a small guy, like he may not, and we had a fairly long discussion about that. But looking at the level in that I think I'm fine with the amount. Are there any other questions, concerns, issues? All right, and until the county gets a Navy, Mr. Kraft, we won't worry about the ships. And we'll move that on. It's going to be looked at tomorrow. And now the next one is the ordinance amending Northampton County Administrative Code and disposition of county property. This was, I believe, Mr. McGee had some concerns and questions on procurement and got it all worked out. You want to take this?
Sure. Yep. Do you want me to read it or just explain it?
Not,
okay, so what happened was when this was ready to go, it wasn't ready to go, and there was some things missing, some of the parts that were being struck out. So I got with the solicitor, and we went over it in great detail, and then we sent it off to county clerk, and here it is for your viewing. Basically, it talks about the subparagraph A, the compensation piece, and it's the wage and benefit levels must be sufficient and meet basic needs and provide some discretionary income for a family of 4. Living wage calculations for Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton, Pennsylvania, along with total compensations, including affordable family health benefits and company-paid pension and or other retirement benefits typical of a responsible employer. And it also includes the piece that Mr. Cusick had added. So I think it's complete and ready to move.
Any discussion, questions?
Just a comment.
Yeah,
I think it's
comments.
good. You know, one of my complaints is this reference to living wage in $1997. It's ridiculous. So I'm glad that you updated this, and I intend to support it.
Does Mr. Barron have anything to say regarding this? Oh, you do?
Oh, the thumbs up, doesn't come up.
Oh, I don't know. He's putting his thumb in the air. I don't know what he's doing. You look like he was ready to jump up. All right. Well, now we're moving on to number 7. I don't know what Mr. Barron was doing there for a second. All right, so the thing is, this is the original ordinance that we spent a lot of time talking about.
No, this is the other.
No, it's not.
Other sections of the administrative code.
God help us all. All right.
It's other sections of the administrative code.
Another section of the administrative code. And this is Department of Fiscal Affairs, Article 6, Department of Human Services, Article 7, Department of Public Works, Article 10, Office of Sheriff, and Article 12, Finance. Mr. Barron's at the podium. Sir.
My daughter will be proud. I didn't realize a thumbs up would get you all shook. That's the way what the kids say. So sorry,
Shake
Mr.
me up
Heckman.
a lot, Mr. Barron.
All right. So to the last sections of the administrative code, when I took a dive into Article 13, there were other sections of the code as well. A little bit less lifting needed to be done, so I felt I would bring them all to you at one time. So to begin, Article 4, Department of Fiscal Affairs. One of the big sticking points is data processing, and you'll note that the first mention of data processing was not struck out and turned into information technology. So that will need to be corrected, 4.08. But we took out central data processing, and we changed it to information technology, which is what, in fact, we do. But if you'd like me to, do you want me to go through each?
Briefly, but you want to get rid of that on page 1, 408, strike data processing and change that to what?
Information technology. I did it everywhere else. I just noticed that now. I'm sorry.
I agree with briefly, and then if somebody has a question, you can jump in.
No problem. So we changed information technology, and on page 2, we don't do a 5-year financial plan anymore. We do a capital improvements plan and annual budget. The capital improvements plan is currently 3 years, but we did not put a date in there because.
I think our page.
No, he's number 2.
His number 2 is our number 3.
No, on the first page, 4.08, division of data processing should be struck in information.
I'm sorry, that's.
On the cover sheet.
Yeah.
And page 2 as well.
And page 2 as well, yeah.
And then
I'm sorry, yeah. So on capital, so division of finance, financial planning and control on page 3. I'm sorry, I was looking at it. I print out my own copies, so. Number 2, capital improvement plan and annual budget. We don't do a 5-year financial plan anymore. We do a 3-year capital plan. However, I didn't put 3 years in there, so we're not restricted to the 3 years if ever somebody would like to change it in the future. With the approval, under number 3, with the approval of the controller, that was always problematic. The controller would be approving policies and procedures. They would also be reviewing. That was never thought out with the standards. So we do at the controller's office, or we did previously, provide guidance of the controller. They would help guide in writing the policies and procedures, but they could not approve them. So that just cleans up that language a little bit, so we're not approving things we're actually auditing in that office. Page 4, changing 5-year plan to capital improvement again, also the same on page 5. And I believe that is, okay, and then page 9, information technology systems. Basically all I do is take the words data processing out. until number 4. We don't have a county data processing library. We did, but it's now on the county's network, period, because we have a network now.
Can I just stop you on page 9 at the top? It says the head of the Division of Data Processing still. Should that have been struck out?
Yes.
No, above that, A, right after A.
Yes, yes.
It says
The head of the Division of Information Technology. I'm sorry.
Strike out data processing and...
Should be the info tech manager second.
Yes, I will have it fixed. It needs to be read tomorrow. I will fix that. I'm sorry.
So...
Same sentence.
Yes.
And then...
IT manager.
My fault.
And then data processing manager, data processing should be struck out.
Information technology
And
manager.
information technology.
Because that's, in fact, what we call it. Bob, I swear I'm getting rid of data processing. I promise. Number 4 is the county's network. I said that. And then I believe
Processing library.
we're done.
Number 5.
Number 5, information technology, yes. Governance committee. Yeah, well, that's what we call, instead of the county's computer usage advisory committee, it's information technology governance committee, which is, yes, that's it.
Well, 6.03.
What was that? Oh, number 6, there's the next section of the administrative code on page 10. So we go to page 13. Sue Wondolowski sent this over to us. There's one change. Now the Area Agency on Aging, along with all the services they include, they do assessments. So we added assessments to that as one of their duties, because that is something they do now that wasn't in the code.
That's it.
That's on page 13.
The bottom.
So then the next change is actually in, moving forward, 28. Okay, thank you. You guys are way ahead of me here. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. So under Public Works, we struck the language including motor vehicles as part of that audit report. I promised I would come to council, so Mr. Saborski, I fulfilled my promise to strike out motor vehicles. What we do now is each division is responsible for managing and maintaining the motor vehicles. This matches our current practice with Suzanne in the Department of Administration, coordinating all that effort and gathering the data together.
So I'm guessing that what your budgetary that's the questions, you have questions on the vehicle, it's going to go to each individual director?
Correct. Yes. What was that?
Everybody, all the directors come when they want a car in their budget.
Correct.
But I mean, now it's.
What? Nobody's getting a car. You get a car. You get a car. Okay.
You answered it.
33, I believe?
Yeah. No, page 33. This.
Before you go to 33, may I?
Yes.
31 says Division of Vector Control.
We did away with that.
Do
didn't
we have vector control?
Yes, we do.
We're going to keep it in there.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're,
Yes.
I thought that was taken.
Yeah.
And state? No? Oh,
On.
sorry.
That's okay. No worries. On page 33, I took out the daily paper of local circulation requirement because it's at the discretion of the executive, but we've taken that out in every other. The advertisement is done right now through the Department of Human Resource on our website, through the NeoGov platform that we pay a lot of money for. So this was sort of just to bring this section of the administrative code in line with where else we've taken it out.
We made some changes to the home rule charter with respect
Correct.
to this issue, so this
Yes.
would just synchronize the two.
Correct.
Good.
And then in finance, on page 36. 5 to 3 because of the 3-year capital improvement plan, and we did that on anywhere that you see on page 36, 5 to 3-year period for any program or capital project, because that's what we currently do. And I believe that that's it.
Am I wrong in thinking that we had something somewhere that we were required to have a 5-year plan? Is that incorrect?
It's the reason we have it is because it's in the administrative code.
Do we have to adhere to that, or can we?
Once you vote to change it, no.
Then we're okay.
Yes. If you so are inclined, if you are so inclined.
Yeah, it's a thumbs up if you want it.
Thumbs up. Okay.
Any questions, concerns, issues, anything, Mr. Barron? Anything else? No, thank you. Okay. Call for adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
So moved. Thank you all. Good night.
Can we kill fewer trees tomorrow night?